Stephen Colbert welcomed Jasmine Crockett onto his show expecting laughs and late-night charm. But when she pulled out a single sheet of paper and called out the system live on air, it wasn't just the segment that got cut. It was the illusion of control. The studio lights hit just right. Warm, sharp, staged to feel like something spontaneous. Stephen Colbert adjusted his tie, glanced toward the camera, then flashed that signature smirk, the one that always read half mischief, half invitation. The band wrapped up the intro, the crowd's applause still fading into the floorboards. It was late-night energy, bottled and humming. "Tonight's going to be fun," Colbert said, grinning into the lens. "We've got some headlines to dismantle, a few billionaires to mock, and, oh yes, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett joins us later in the show. You're going to want to stick around for that one. It gets real." Laughter from the crowd. One or two surprised claps. The tease worked. Not because Jasmine Crockett was a stranger to controversy, but because she wasn't the type to bring chaos. She brought clarity. And clarity in the world of late-night TV could feel dangerous, especially when it didn't come wrapped in punchlines. Backstage, the control room was already talking camera angles. "Stay tight on Colbert when she talks," one producer said. "Her tone doesn't shift much, but the room does." They knew what she could do. They'd seen the Kimmel clip, the way she stayed steady while everyone else fumbled for lines. But this was Colbert's house, or at least it had been. The audience didn't know what to expect. Most came for the usual rhythm: snarky headlines, desk bits, a guest who could keep things light and maybe get a few likes on social media. Jasmine Crockett didn't usually do light, she did truth. And truth doesn't always land with a laugh track. Colbert leaned back in his chair during commercial break, flipping through the night's cue cards. He was ready for a little pushback, maybe even a mic drop moment. But he wasn't ready for what was about to happen. No one was. When the lights came back up and the music kicked in, the mood shifted again. This time, tighter, expectant. The screen behind him flashed her name in bold white letters: Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, live. "Ladies and gentlemen," Colbert said, "you've seen the clips, you've read the tweets. Now, meet the real deal." And with that, the audience clapped. Not roaring, but curious. The kind of applause that asked, what's about to happen next? She didn't strut. She glided, smooth and certain, like the floor had been built for her steps. A midnight blue suit, sharp as honesty, caught the light just enough to say she wasn't here to blend in. Her hair was up, her eyes forward, and her presence louder than anything the band could play. The applause rose, not wild, but present. The kind of clapping people do when they're not sure yet if they're excited or if they just don't want to miss whatever's about to unfold. Stephen Colbert stood from his chair, offering a hand that Jasmine took with calm precision. A handshake that said, "I'm not here for war, but I don't run from it either." "Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, everybody," Colbert beamed. The audience responded with another polite burst of noise. Jasmine smiled, the kind of smile that holds back more than it reveals. She didn't wave, she didn't play to the crowd. She just sat down, straight-backed, legs crossed, hands resting gently on the armrest. Colbert leaned back in his chair, index cards in hand, ready to ease into the bit. "You've been busy," he said, playful tone loaded with subtext. "You've been everywhere, hearings, viral clips, and now here." Jasmine didn't bite. She gave a small nod. "Glad to be here," she said, voice low, composed, like molasses poured slow and deliberate. And that was the moment it began. Not the conversation, not yet, but the shift. You could feel it in the crowd. Laughter came more cautiously. Phones that were halfway back in pockets stayed out a little longer. Eyes widened, not with shock, but anticipation. Colbert smiled again, adjusting in his seat like he always did when he sensed something new was about to unfold. "I've got questions," he said. Jasmine leaned in just slightly, voice smooth. "I've got answers." That was it. No fireworks, no fanfare. Just a woman in a midnight blue suit sitting calmly across from a man holding cue cards and a country watching, waiting to see who would blink first. Colbert shuffled his cards with a smirk, a little showmanship for the audience, a little signal that the first punch was coming, and it'd be soft enough to land with a laugh. So, he said, eyebrows up, voice playful, Congress has been busy. I mean, if chaos was a budget line, I think you guys would have passed that unanimously. Laughter from the audience. Easy, familiar. Colbert leaned in. Tell me, Jasmine, or should I say the House's resident quote machine, is it hard being the most spicy voice in politics, or does it just come naturally with the hair volume? Laughter again, bigger this time. That kind of laugh where people look around first just to make sure it's still okay to find something funny. Jasmine smiled, real but not wide. She let the laughter settle, didn't rush to speak. Then, Stephen, I wake up like this, she said, smooth as ever, clarity and curls fully intact. That earned a few claps, a couple of oohs. She paused, tilted her head just slightly. And if that feels spicy to some folks, she added, maybe they've just been seasoning their conversations wrong. That one hit. The laugh was deeper, not just at the joke, but at the accuracy behind it. Colbert laughed, too. The kind of laugh that says, okay, she came to play. But you could see it already. He was trying to steer the car. Jasmine was letting him, for now. He kept the jokes coming. Political gridlock, partisan drama, committee clashes. I don't want to say Congress is dysfunctional, he grinned. But if it were a marriage, I think Dr. Phil would have walked out halfway through the first session. Jasmine nodded, amused. Fair, she said, but the difference is, in Congress, we still pretend we're getting along for the cameras. Another ripple of laughter. This time you could feel the room warming to her, not because she was funny, but because she didn't need to be loud to be sharp. She wasn't swerving from the bit. She was letting Colbert take the lead, but she was in control of the turns. And as Colbert moved to the next card, something in his smile flickered, just for a second. Like he knew he wouldn't be driving for long. Colbert cleared his throat, that classic segue cue he used when the jokes were drying up, but the real game was just beginning. He flipped the next card with a bit more flair, as if it might bite. So, he said, drawing out the O, like a question he already thought he knew the answer to. That moment with Jimmy Kimmel. The crowd laughed lightly, already remembering. A few claps, one isolated cheer in the back. Colbert leaned in, grinning. You didn't just shut him down. You practically took over the whole show. Viral moment, quotes on coffee mugs, TikToks with dramatic music. Be honest, is that your strategy, or does it just happen when you walk into a studio? It was a wink disguised as a question, a soft jab wrapped in praise. Jasmine didn't flinch, didn't even shift in her seat. She reached for her water, took a calm sip, and looked at Colbert with a quiet kind of clarity. The kind that doesn't need to raise its voice to change the weather in a room. Funny, she said, voice even, how clarity keeps getting mistaken for confrontation. That line didn't hit like a joke. It hit like a window sliding open in a room that thought it was locked. The laughter paused, not because the audience didn't know how to respond, but because they did, and they were thinking. Colbert blinked, smile intact, but shrinking at the edges. He opened his mouth, then closed it, recalibrating. Jasmine leaned forward just a bit, enough to close the air between them. Not threatening, just intentional. I didn't come to trend, she continued. I came to tell the truth. If that goes viral, well, that says more about the noise we're used to than the moment itself. The crowd was quiet now, not in discomfort, in attention. Colbert chuckled, softer this time. All right, he said, we're taking the gloves off early. Jasmine smiled, finally. Stephen, she said, I never put them on. And just like that, the balance shifted. Not a fight, not a takedown, just gravity tilting ever so slightly in her direction. Colbert tapped the edge of his desk, settling back into the space between banter and barbs. His smile was still there. That late-night grin made of equal parts timing and teeth. But his eyes were tracking now, not just performing. He held up a photo. It was Jasmine, mid-speech on the house floor, hand raised, eyes sharp, a moment that had already been sliced into reaction, gifs, and quote threads. "Here you are," he said, holding the image toward the camera, bringing that trademark Crockett heat. He glanced at her, then back to the crowd. "Some folks call it bold, others dramatic. Me? I think we've found the first congresswoman who could also headline a one-woman Broadway show." Laughter. Loud and easy. The kind people fall into because it sounds safe. Jasmine didn't laugh. Not because she didn't have a sense of humor. Because she had a sense of balance. She waited, let the room settle. Then, with a voice still cool enough to sting, "Feels like survival, more than performance." It was a sentence, but it landed like a verdict. The laughter stopped. Not suddenly, but awkwardly. The kind of halt that happens when people aren't sure if they're supposed to be smiling anymore. Colbert froze just slightly, eyes blinking, fingers still resting on the photo. He looked like he wanted to say something. But the air between them had shifted again. Jasmine tilted her head, not smug at all, just steady. "When a black woman raises her voice," she said, "people don't hear passion, they hear a threat. So if I bring fire, it's not because I want attention, it's because the room is cold." Colbert looked down. His next joke, whatever it had been, was already gone. Someone in the crowd exhaled dash, loud enough to catch the mic. That kind of breath that sounds like, finally. Colbert smiled again, but this time it was thinner, measured, real. "Well," he said, "I can't argue with that." And for once, he didn't try. Colbert shifted in his chair. The room had gone dense. Not hostile, not tense in the combative way, but heavy, like someone had opened a truth too big to fold back up. He cleared his throat, tried to hit reset. "Well," he said, voice a little too chipper, "let's lighten things up, shall we? I heard your dog made headlines for, marking his territory on Capitol Hill." A few chuckles, not quite laughter. The kind of noise people make when they're trying to return to a script. That suddenly feels out of date. Jasmine smiled, barely. Not cold, but not indulgent either. She let the moment hang for just a second too long and then said, "We can laugh, Stephen, but let's not pretend it's not serious." Colbert blinked. The cue cards in his hand suddenly looked a little too full. Jasmine continued, her tone still soft, still smooth, but carved out of something firmer now. "I'm not saying don't joke. Humor matters. But sometimes we joke so much we forget what we're laughing at and who's paying for the punchline." The crowd murmured. That ripple of noise that means they felt it. Not applause, not gasps, just attention, turned all the way up. Colbert leaned forward, trying to find a new foothold. "Right, but don't you think we need a little levity sometimes? People are exhausted." Jasmine nodded. "Absolutely. But levity without truth? That's just noise with a better soundtrack." Another pause. Not long, but enough. The band didn't play. The audience didn't shift. She had the room, not by force, by focus. And while Colbert was still smiling, you could see the corners tugging downward, like he'd just realized. He wasn't in control of this moment anymore. He was part of it, just like everybody else. Colbert laughed lightly, but his fingers tapped faster now, a rhythm against the desk, like he was trying to keep time in a room that had gone offbeat. He glanced down at the next cue card, but Jasmine didn't wait. She shifted in her chair, not dramatic, not sharp, just enough to reach into the inside pocket of her blazer. One smooth motion, no hesitation, and from it she pulled a folded piece of paper. The audience stirred. You could feel it, that ripple of, "What is that?" The kind of murmur that happens just before something flips. Jasmine didn't hold it up like a prop. She held it like a page of truth. No drama, no flourish, just facts. "I didn't come here to make noise," she said, unfolding the paper and sliding it across the desk. "I came with receipts." Colbert's smile didn't vanish, but it shifted, subtle, a degree tighter, like someone trying to laugh through a sentence they didn't expect. He glanced at the document, didn't touch it, just looked, eyebrows slightly raised, eyes narrowing like he was scanning for fine print. "What is this?" he asked, measured, cautious. Jasmine didn't answer right away. She let the moment cook. The camera caught a tight shot of her face, composed, precise, unbothered. "It's a strategy memo," she said finally, "from a major media firm, circulated to campaigns, networks, and talk show bookers." Now the audience was fully quiet, not because they were scared, but because something real had just been placed on the table, and they didn't know if they were supposed to look away. Colbert leaned forward a little, eyes still on the page. He didn't joke. He didn't blink. And Jasmine? She didn't press. She didn't perform. She just waited. Because when you've been talked over your whole life, you learn how to make silence do the heavy lifting. Colbert finally reached for the paper, one hand, slow, deliberate. He unfolded it on the desk like it might burn. His eyes scanned the top line, then the bolded phrases underneath. It was real, and it was sharp. The crowd hadn't moved. Not really, but you could feel their bodies tilting forward, like instinct was dragging them closer to the truth. Jasmine leaned in slightly. Not to dominate, just to explain. That same calm she'd kept the whole interview was now starting to feel like something heavier, like armor. "It outlines tactics," she said, "to discredit certain voices in politics, specifically black women. It calls us non-compliant, and says we're best neutralized through tone framing." Colbert's brow creased. "You're saying this was sent to—" He trailed off. "Media teams, showrunners, debate coaches," she replied. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "The language is coded, but the message is clear. Push them, frame them, make them seem too loud, too angry, too emotional." The room was dead quiet. No cue cards, no rim shot, just the truth. "And Stephen," she continued, her voice like silk across a blade, "you may not realize it, but late-night hosts are often used to normalize that bias." That hit different. You could see it on his face. Colbert blinking once, eyes flicking toward the audience, then back at her. "You're saying I'm part of this," he said quietly. Jasmine didn't answer like it was a gotcha. She answered like it was overdue. "I'm saying the system works better when we don't question how it's working. And sometimes the jokes, the segments, the spicy labels, they soften the edge of a message that's meant to cut us down." One person clapped. Awkward, lonely. They stopped halfway. Colbert sat back, hands clasped, and for the first time all night, he didn't have a follow-up, because sometimes the mirror you didn't ask for gets placed right on your desk. Colbert adjusted his cuffs. A reflex more than anything, like tightening a tie when the room's temperature suddenly spikes. The paper was still on the desk between them, plain, folded, loud in its stillness. "Now wait," he said, a smile creeping back onto his face. But this one was thinner, all surface and no anchor. "Let's not go turning this into a roast of late-night TV, okay? I mean, I'm just a guy with jokes and cue cards, not some media puppet master." Laughter. But it was tight. The kind that floats out of mouths before brains catch up. A few folks even glanced around, trying to see how others were reacting. No one wanted to be the first one not laughing. Jasmine didn't move, didn't flinch. She tilted her head just slightly, then replied, calm and unshaken, "It's not a roast, it's a reckoning." And just like that, the air changed. You could feel the shift hit Colbert. He blinked once, the smile still there, but held in place like scaffolding. He was trying to regain footing, make it feel like he still had the rhythm, like he could turn this back into a bit. But it wasn't a bit. Not anymore. Jasmine leaned in just enough for the cameras to tighten. "I don't think you meant harm," she said. But intent doesn't erase impact, especially when the format itself is built to laugh off the very voices it invites. No raise in volume, no flash of anger, just presence, solid, unwavering, undeniable. Colbert's fingers tapped again, that same rhythm from earlier, now without the confidence. He looked off camera, a glance, quick, a producer catching his eye. Even they weren't sure what to signal back, because this wasn't going how anyone had planned. This wasn't a segment, this was a shift, and everyone knew it. It started in waves. First a few claps, cautious but sincere, then a pause, then more, louder this time. Half the audience was applauding, the other half sat frozen, not in protest, but in confusion. You could feel the tension crack open. Not with a bang, but with a slow, uncertain unraveling. One woman in the third row leaned forward, hands clasped tight in her lap. A man in the back crossed his arms. Near the side aisle, a younger person stood briefly, uncertain, like they'd misread the moment, then sat back down. The camera panned wide. Producers rarely let it do that, but someone made the call. Show the room, let them see the discomfort. Whispers rolled through the rows, not loud, not angry, just real, people trying to decide how they felt, now that the lights didn't match the energy. Colbert looked out at the crowd. You could see it in his face, and he knew the mood had turned, but he didn't know how to steer it back. His fingers hovered over the next cue card, but he didn't flip it. Jasmine sat in that same exact posture, back straight, voice unused, letting the moment speak louder than she ever needed to. The applause faded again. Not because it lost momentum, but because the room was now in something deeper than performance. It was reflection. Colbert finally cleared his throat, voice quieter than before. "Well," he said, "this just became the realest conversation we've had all week." One person laughed. Nervously, another coughed. A third whispered, "She's not wrong." And from that point on, the room didn't feel like a comedy show. It felt like something else entirely, something messier, more honest, more human, the kind of moment you don't reset from with a punchline. Behind the cameras, chaos. Not loud, not yet, but sharp. Movements that said more than voices could. A floor manager pacing tight loops near the curtain. A producer in a headset speaking fast, not blinking. Another, clipboard in hand, mouthing, "Wrap it" to someone just off stage. They hadn't rehearsed this. No one rehearses what to do when a guest shifts the tone so far off script. The cards in the host's hand start to feel like props from a different show. In the booth, someone tapped furiously at a console, pulling up alternate camera feeds. Anything that could buy them space. Colbert kept smiling, but it was different now. Not performative, not charming, just there, like a photograph of a smile someone forgot to take down. He glanced toward the edge of the set, where a stage manager held up two fingers, then made the cut motion. 2 minutes, then silence. Colbert looked down at the desk, at the paper Jasmine had brought, still folded neatly, still sitting between them, still heavy. "Well," he said, voice dipping low, "we're going to go to break a little early tonight." The audience didn't clap. They didn't move. They just watched like they weren't sure if the break was real or just another way to dodge something uncomfortable. Jasmine looked at him. Not with anger, but with a kind of calm disappointment. That lands harder than rage ever could. Colbert shifted in his chair, tried to reframe. "Tough crowd, huh?" he offered weakly. Jasmine didn't answer. She turned slightly toward the camera instead. And that's when the energy split. The crowd frozen, the producers scrambling, and one guest, deciding she was going to finish the moment, whether they let her or not. Jasmine's voice had just started to rise. Not loud, but focused, like a beam of light pointed at something no one wanted seen. "I think the real question," she began, "is why truth only becomes uncomfortable when..." Cut. Cameras dropped to wide shot. Audio faded, The studio lights dipped. Then, "Please stand by. We're experiencing technical difficulties." The graphic filled the screen. Red, blue, white, boring, corporate, safe. The live feed vanished, not with a glitch, but with precision, planned, executed, disguised as accident. In living rooms across the country, people blinked. Remote controls hovered. Was that real? Was it planned? Back in the studio, silence, then motion. Producers stepped onto the set, offering polite nods and vague instructions. Colbert stood slowly, still holding his cards. He didn't look at Jasmine, not yet. Jasmine sat still, hands in her lap, eyes calm. She didn't need to raise her voice. She'd already said enough. A technician approached with a soft, "We're off." She nodded once. Off air didn't mean off message. The moment had already landed. What came next would ripple far beyond commercial breaks. And cue cards. Because people watching knew the difference between a segment and a silencing. And this dash. This wasn't just a technical difficulty, it was a decision. The show went to commercial, then silence. Not just on air, in the hallways, in the dressing rooms, in the spaces where people were usually cracking jokes or running lines. But now, whispers, tight-lipped glances, crew members checking their phones like they were waiting for permission to react. Did they just cut her mid-sentence? Is she still in the studio? Was that planned? Nobody had answers, only questions, and one big truth hanging in the air like static. They didn't expect her to take it there. Studio security, 2 guards in navy polos, walked briskly toward the guest hallway. Not aggressive, just present, visible. Like someone had made a call just in case. They paused outside Jasmine's dressing room, didn't knock, just waited. Inside, Jasmine sat on the edge of the couch, still in her midnight blue suit, still composed. An assistant offered her water. She declined. She didn't speak, didn't need to. The silence said it all. She had not come to perform. She came to reveal. Down the corridor, Colbert retreated to the green room. He didn't stop to talk to the crew, didn't pause to shake hands, just closed the door behind him. Inside, the laughter from earlier felt like it belonged to another show, another night, another version of himself that hadn't just watched control slip through his fingers on national television. His assistant asked if he wanted to issue a statement. He didn't answer, just stared at the monitor, now frozen on a paused frame of the set. The moment was gone, but the consequences were just arriving. A blurry phone video posted by someone in the back row, too grainy to be official, too clear to ignore. It captured the seconds after the feed cut. Jasmine mid-sentence, eyes steady, voice rising. "You invited a guest," she said, "but what you got was a truth you didn't script." That line hit like lightning. 12 seconds of footage, no music, no editing, just raw truth on studio carpet. Within 20 minutes, the clip was everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram Reels. One caption read, "She finished the sentence for all of us." The hashtag trended before lunch. Colbert cut her. Commenters flooded in, "She wasn't rude, she was ready." This is why they don't like unscripted women. She turned a talk show into a truth show. Even the silence from Colbert's team made noise. No denial, no context, just digital stillness in the face of a digital fire. By evening, verified accounts were weighing in. Academics, activists, comedians. Even a late-night rival tweeted a subtle jab. Sometimes the funniest thing is watching someone get uncomfortable around the truth. The clip gained millions of views in hours, but it wasn't just going viral, it was going loud, loud in the way Jasmine never had to be. And as people hit replay, one thing became crystal clear. She hadn't been cut off because she was out of line. She was cut off because the line couldn't hold her anymore. The next morning broke quietly. No official follow-up, no clarifying clip, no cheery Instagram wrap-up from Colbert's team. Just a lot of screens refreshing, waiting, and then it hit. At 9:02 a.m., Jasmine Crockett posted a single sentence, Black background, white text, no hashtags, no filters, no tags. If the truth made you hit commercial, maybe you weren't ready for the conversation. It didn't come with a press release. It didn't need one, because the moment had already passed, and the reckoning had already begun. The post exploded, retweeted over 150,000 times in the first hour. Replies poured in from every direction. She said it and stood in it. This is bigger than late night. Jasmine Crockett is the conversation now. Colbert's camp, under pressure and way behind the moment, released a short statement mid-afternoon. It was vague, too vague, something about scheduling difficulties and respecting all voices. It didn't mention Jasmine by name, didn't reference the cut, didn't even hint at the weight of what had taken place. And people noticed. Cable news hosts debated it in primetime. Think pieces dropped before dinner. Even college communications classes started dissecting the segment in real time. Not as media, but as a moment. Because it wasn't just about one guest, or one sentence, or one cut. It was about what that cut represented. Control, format, fear, and people were asking real questions now. What is the role of late-night television in politics? Why are bold voices only welcome if they fit the bit? And what happens when the guest doesn't play along? Jasmine didn't go on a press tour. She didn't sit for interviews. She let the clip speak. She let the silence after the clip speak louder. Because the truth didn't need a spin cycle, it just needed space. And once it had it, there was no putting it back. By the end of the week, Colbert's ratings dipped for the first time in months. But something bigger happened. Viewers, especially younger ones, started asking for more truth, more tension, more moments that don't get cut to commercial. They weren't looking for a laugh. They were looking for a reckoning. And Jasmine Crockett, she wasn't the start of it. She was just the first one who didn't blink. This story was intense, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.